to offer a land acknowledgement by reminding us that we are all on the land that have been cared for at least 13,000 years by indigenous people. Most recently, the land had been cared for by the Haudenosaunee, who oversaw this land until they were displaced during the 18th century. We're very fortunate to have as our two speakers Roger Luther, Broome County historian, also president of the Broome County Historical Society Board of Trustees, and Ryan Frey, WSKG filmmaker, as well as senior director of television content here at WSKG. Ryan is also a member of the Broome County Historical Society Board of Trustees. Roger Luther will begin the program tonight with the stories of the 6 Broome County merry-go-rounds and what makes each one of them special. Then Brian will follow with exclusive footage of the restoration of the Ross Park Carousel. More on all 6 of the carousels will be in this upcoming documentary on them. So Roger, let's go back to the beginning and learn about these 6 carousels.
Thanks, Linda. Nice turnout. There's a lot of interest in our carousels, and I found that out as I was doing research on it.
We can't hear you. We can hear you going.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Not really. Okay. Turn it up.
Closer to the mic. Turn it up.
Testing. So anyway, nice crowd. Thank you all for coming. And I got to tell you, those carousel cookies are going to be a hard act to follow. I think they're amazing. I'm going to talk about the 6 carousels that we have. A little bit about the parks where they are, and a little on the carousels themselves. Show a lot of pictures, current pictures, some vintage pictures. Talk about a few interesting stories along the way, and a couple unsolved mysteries may come out of this. It has been a real challenge doing the research on these things. It's not that there isn't a lot of information out there on them. There's a ton of information. But unfortunately, a lot of it is conflicting. For instance, a couple of the sources say that the Ross Park Carousel was the very first Johnson carousel that was built here. That's not true. And another source says that there were, in fact, 7 Johnson carousels. So you have to pick and choose. You have to be careful what you use. I tried to use as many sources as possible and sort through them and make sure that I got the right information. Probably what we treated as gospel was the National Register of Historic Places. All 6 of our carousels are listed on the National Register as of 1992. And that's no easy task. If you've ever tried to get something listed on the National Register, you have to do a ton of research. That was done back in the 90s. So that is a good source of information. The National Carousel Association is another good source. So we use a lot of sources, but unfortunately they aren't all in agreement. Hopefully the ones we settled, the information we settled in on is right. 1919. Ideal Park yesterday was the scene of happy diversion for thousands. Throngs of children were attracted by the new merry-go-round, which is used for the first time. That was in the Binghamton Press, May 31st, 1919. And there it is. That's a shot from the opening day of the very first George F. Johnson carousel. And sure enough, those are definitely throngs of children. There he is. The carousel was a gift to the community from George F. Johnson, and there was only one condition, and that the rides would always be free. Over the next 15 years, Johnson would donate 5 more wood-carved carousels to be installed in parks throughout Binghamton, Endicott, and Johnson City, establishing Broome County as the carousel capital of the world. That's what we call it. I don't know if anybody else in it sounds good to me. I don't know anybody else that has 6 carousels. And so Johnson was acknowledged. There's a beautiful memorial to him in Rec Park, and it says it all. Erected by an appreciative community to the nobility of his character and his great benefactions to the people. And that was 1923. And that actually stands right near the Carousel in Rec Park, which opened in 1923, I believe. Okay, a little bit about the parks. During the late 1800s, parks were established by the Binghamton, Leicestershire, and Union Railroad Company. And they conveniently put these parks at the very end of the railroad streetcar lines. People could get to them. And those don't look like any parks that we see today. They were incredible. They were called Victorian Gardens. I believe I saw one of them referred to. And they drew huge crowds. Originally, there were 3 of these parks. Ross Park was started in 1875, the Casino in 1897, and Bennett Park around 1900. In 1916, George F. Johnson bought the Casino, renamed it Ideal Park. It would later be renamed again to Enjoy Park. And Bennett Park, he bought it in 1921 and renamed that Recreation Park. So here's the original 3 parks. And then in 1913, Highland Park was built. C. Fred Johnson in 1923. George W. Johnson, 1923, and West Endicott in 1923. So those are the 7 locations where 6 of the carousels ended up. Okay, on to the carousels. They were made by the Allen Herschel Company out of North Tonawanda. That's over near Buffalo. And they were probably the most famous manufacturer of wood-carved carousels. I read that they made a total of over 3,000 carousels. And notice that the carousels is spelled with 2 R's. It turns out that's an accepted spelling. It's, preferred is 1 R, but it is accepted with 2. And this company prefers to use the 2 R's. Here's a couple shots of the factory in its day. Today, it operates as a museum, a carousel museum. And from the website, it looks fantastic. All 6 carousels continue to function today, although one of them is being restored as we speak. 5 of the 6 are in their original locations. All have been restored multiple times over the years. All are listed on the National Register. And 2 of the original band organs are still in use. Okay, Ideal Park is where the first carousel was installed, and that was 1919. But today it's located at Highland Park. So if you want to see the very first Johnson carousel, go to Highland Park. So there it is. It was installed in Ideal Park in 1919. Opened on Memorial Day, you saw the picture, 34 horses, 1 pig, and 1 dog. and the organ has since been removed. Okay, Ideal Park was renamed Enjoy Park in the 1940s. And in 1967, Enjoy Park was sold to the Union Endicott School District. Carousel and its enclosure were removed and installed at Highland Park. There it goes. And there, it's a beautiful setting up there, by the way. Now, last year, it was being renovated. So when I was there in June, that's what it looked like. All the horses had been removed and were being repaired and restored. Later in the season, I went back, and now it's all reassembled, and they did a beautiful job. Yeah, I love the dog. These are just works of art. There's the thing. Now, unfortunately, there was a casualty. By the end of the season, one of the horses had broken loose. So, it's probably repaired by now. Okay, Ross Park, 1920. This is a note from the Common Council proceedings, December 5th, 1919. Georgette Johnson has purchased and will install a merry-go-round in Ross Park to be free to all. This is but another manifestation of the interest Mr. Johnson takes, not only in our sister cities, but in Binghamton as well. Binghamton thanks Mr. Johnson. So the Ross Park Carousel, Johnson specified that this was to be the biggest and best carousel available at the time. This was 1920. It had 60 horses, all jumpers, and a Wurlitzer military band organ. Instrumentation included trumpets, trombones, flutes, violins, and drums. And it opened Memorial Day 1920. A lot of carousels don't have jumpers on the outermost ring of horses. They're just static, they don't go up and down. And I guess one of the reasons is that people can reach out and grab the ring and get a free ride. But all of our carousels are all jumpers. Because you can get a free ride without the ring. Okay, there's the Ross Park Carousel. It was renovated in 1990. There's the band organ. Okay, the carousel is currently being renovated and restored with plans to reopen hopefully in 2025 at a slightly different location in the park. These are a couple shots of work in progress in the restoration shop. And I know Brian is going to be talking about that and showing you a clip. These I just took off their website. And the band organ restoration is complete. That is now in storage in the Parks and Rec building. Now, there was a casualty. At one point in 1935, a woman was thrown by one of the horses. Yeah. One of the horses on the Ross Park merry-go-round bounced so wildly that a woman was hurled to the ground and had to spend 4 weeks in the hospital. So she sued the city for $5,000. There's the guilty party right there. And they ended up settling for $1,500. But the complaint was that it didn't have stirrups. Some of the horses had stirrups. But even still. Okay, see Fred Johnson Park, 1923. And this is from May 31st, 1922. Almost all of these opened on Memorial Days. The new C. Fred Johnson Park proved the mecca for hundreds of recreation seekers yesterday. More than 7,500 men, women, and children rode on the merry-go-round during the day. Memorial Day 1923. This is the largest of all 6 carousels. It cost $30,000. Has 72 horses, all jumpers, and a Roser band organ. The carousel was badly damaged during the flood of 1935. It was later repaired and restored, and the band organ was removed at that time. After the flood, I believe it went into private ownership and was eventually restored. And then in 2023, the 100th anniversary of the carousel was celebrated. That's what it'll look like tomorrow. This is just a gorgeous carousel. My granddaughter. Okay, Rec Park, 1925. More than 6,800 persons rode the new merry-go-round at Recreation Park yesterday. This was June 1st, 1925. This was a gift of Lillian Johnson Sweet, George F. Johnson's daughter. Cost $25,000, had 60 horses. This one has a Wurlitzer 146B band organ. It's rebuilt in 1987. The 146B actually has two, these work like on piano rolls, and this one has 2 mechanisms, so as one roll finishes, it can be removed while the other one is playing, so you never have a break. You don't have to wait for the thing to rewind before the music continues. This carousel provides inspiration for the Twilight Zone episode, Walking Distance. And there it is. Getting a new coat of paint in the 60s. there's the two rolls. Well, believe it or not, on opening day, they cranked it up and the music was playing. And the next day there were letters to the editor complaining about the music. The residents on Willow Street, yes, complaining about the music being too loud and darn drums. So they sent a crew out there to make an adjustment, and here's an article in response to the letters. The tone of the merry-go-round has been lowered, and the drum playing portion of the music apparatus has been eliminated. In an effort to soften the music and prevent any possible annoyance to neighboring residents. The band organs were also made by Wurlitzer right there in North Carolina. And there's a screenshot from the Twilight Zone episode. Now, that carousel was not featured in the film, but it provided the inspiration to Rod Serling for the story. Okay, George W. Johnson Park, 1934. Northside children were out en masse on Memorial Day to enjoy the new merry-go-round at the George W. Johnson Park, Oak Hill Avenue, the gift of Mr. Johnson. The apparatus was in constant operation, making a record of 7,500 rides. "36 horses opened Memorial Day, 1934. These are all in such good shape. Just incredible. Now, West Endicott Park. And I've been going through this chronologically, and we just did 1934. Well, notice West Endicott Park says 1929 on it. And that's because the National Register of Historic Places says it was built in 1929. So we believed them, and but we went a little farther and checked other sources, because there was the National Carousel Association built in 1920. We all know Wikipedia's got it right. Purchased 1929. The Binghamton website, the Broome County website, even MapQuest, everybody says it was built in 1929. And the reason they all say that is because they got the information from the National Register of Historic Places. The problem is, it's wrong. That carousel was installed in 1934, and I can prove it. Here's an article from June 27th, 1934. Because of the popularity of the merry-go-round recently installed in the George W. Johnson Park, George F. Johnson decided to present one for the children of West Endicott, which will open at the West Endicott Park Thursday afternoon. So it is absolutely a fact that it was built in 1934. And the problem is, I was working on this talk last Sunday, And I thought, hey, wouldn't it be neat to get the actual newspaper article the day after the park opened and just see what it said about the carousel. So I went through and I got 5 of the 6, and I could not find the one for West Endicott Park. And I searched all through 1929, and it just wasn't there. So I brought the search by year, then another year, and then finally I found the article in 1934. So 1929, in fact, is 1934. 34 horses, 1 pig, 1 dog. And there they are. That's the location of all 6 carousels. Now, the 7th carousel. National Register of Historic Places claims that Johnson donated the 7th carousel to this area. And what it claims is that the very first carousel that he donated in 1919 to Ideal Park was later replaced by another just a few years after 1919. And not only that, the first one no longer exists. It just disappeared. So we got a big mystery. It didn't make sense because Johnson got good press coverage with everything he did. So if in fact he donated another carousel, a second carousel to Ideal Park, it would have been covered in the news. And there was nothing. And if the first one eventually disappeared or was torn down, that would have been in the news, and it wasn't. So this is suspect, and it's a big mystery, and let's see here. So I like playing with Photoshop. Here's what happened. As they were researching for the National Register, they found this picture. And they found this picture in a 1925 publication by Endicott Johnson. And the caption says, "The first merry-go-round at Ideal Park." Okay? Well, the researchers assumed that this was the first Johnson carousel that was installed in 1919. And because this article was in 1925 and it said there was a first one, there must have been a second one between 1919 and 1925. So that's the conclusion that the researchers made. And that is how the National Historical Register listing reads today.
It's like a 10 now.
Yeah. Okay, so they concluded that it was the second Johnson carousel that was later moved to Highland Park, and that the original 1919 Johnson carousel no longer exists. But here's the problem. The carousel in the photo is not the 1919 Johnson carousel. In fact, there was a carousel that predates the Johnson ownership of the park by several years. It was installed in 1910, before he bought the park. And that's what the picture is. And that's why the top of it looks different, because it was called I think, a portable carousel. So that's how the mistake, that's how I believe the mistake was made, and I'm sticking to it. And here's the article from 1910. A merry-go-round has been set up at the casino. It was used by the public for the first time yesterday. So I think it's pretty conclusive evidence that that first carousel is the first Johnson carousel is the one that ended up at Highland Park. Okay, it's not replaced with a second machine. It still exists and is the same machine that was later moved to Highland Park. And you take it a step farther, you can take the original 1919 photograph that we saw at the very beginning, blow it up and compare it to the existing carousel at Highland Park. And you can see that the features, the design features, are identical. So it's definitely the same machine. So that's 2 strikes for the National Register. There's more. The other 7th carousel. And then we'll wrap it up with that. Okay, back in 1995, Endicott Development Association announced plans to purchase a 1917 wood-carved Herschel carousel from a town in Michigan. They started fundraising, collecting money, and moving forward. It was going to be installed in a visitor's center at the former Union Forging Company property at 500 North Street, Endicott. But it only lasted a year. The project was finally abandoned. They couldn't get enough donations to make it happen. So that's the story of the second carousel. Okay, so now you know the complete story on the 6 carousels that we have. And the answer to the unsolved mystery. And I thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Ian, how's everybody doing? Thanks for coming out. Glad it's tonight and not tomorrow, right? Yeah. So, as Roger mentioned, I'm working on a film about the carousels. I've actually been working on this film for maybe 4 years. Actually came up with the idea maybe about 4 or 5 years ago when I heard that they were going to restore the Ross Park Carousel, and I thought that would be a great opportunity to do a documentary about the history of the carousels and then follow the restoration of the Ross Park Carousel. So during the pandemic, I got news. I remember this day. It was a cold day, and I think it was in April of 2020. I went over to a couple of people went over to Ross Park and filmed some footage because they were going to get ready to take it down, and then things got delayed, and things got delayed some more and more and more. So we kept waiting. We kept waiting for them to tell us when they were going to dismantle the Ross Park Carousel. Finally, I think we were actually here. I think I was premiering the Devil's Fire film, and I got news that they were going to start taking the horses apart. So we rushed a crew over there and got some footage of them taking the horses down. Then it waited for a little bit longer, and we found out that they were going to be shipping the horses to Plainville, Connecticut, where it's a very well-known factory. Roger showed some pictures of it, where they restore carousels. It's the same factory where they restored the Recreation Park Carousel and some of the other carousel areas. Wonderful place. So in the spring of this year, finally, I got a call. I was working on my Underground Railroad film, and I couldn't go. And they said, "We are going to start." This factory said, "We're going to start restoring these horses like in a couple days." And so I couldn't go. So I asked Elisa Micha, who is here tonight, and Adam Struley, who works for me. And I sent them out to Connecticut and asked them to get some footage. And they spent a couple days out there shooting footage and got a couple interviews. And so what I thought I'd show you tonight, Alyssa put together this beautiful piece. It's only about 7 minutes long. And it has some footage of them restoring the Ross Park Carousel. This will be part of the film. I thought you would enjoy seeing this. So, Roger said I got the down arrow.
The one thing we did as a family is to go to parks, and I love carousels. I loved horses. If you wanted to be a cowboy, you could be a cowboy. If you wanted to be a cowgirl, you could be that. If you wanted to be a knight, you got on an armored horse. Or if you wanted to be a princess, maybe you picked a beautiful white horse. It was part of not only the joy of being at a park and being on a carousel, you used your imagination back then. Everything that's involved in life, the the ups, the downs. You seem like you're going around all the time. All these different things made this the most enjoyable job I could have ever chosen. The immigrants that came to this country at the turn of the century, and they had a little satchel of tools, and look what they did. They didn't have CNC machines, they didn't have computers, scanners. They just looked at that, and one guy would draw a horse on the wall, and he'd point to one of the carvers and go, do the leg, and the next one would do this, and if you owned the shop, you got to do the head.
The outside of the ride, so the side that faces you, is called the romantic side, because it's the side that's more detailed, usually has the jewels, usually has more work put into it. And the opposite side is non-romantic side. The reason it's the romantic side and it's more detailed and it's facing you is because usually the master carver or a better carver in the shop would have carved that side, while the apprentice who is practicing their carving would have been doing the other side. It's not seen as much, so it doesn't need to be as detailed. They can work on it and not have it be as fancy as the first side, so you get romantic, non-romantic sides. There's different carving jokes. Apparently, there's a thing that if you see a horse where the tongue is sticking out the side of its mouth, that's an indication that that person who carved it did not get paid what they wanted to get paid. So they had the tongue sticking out. Some rides you have a lot of those, some rides you don't. Some rides where they really didn't think they got paid enough, some of the figures are anatomically correct. It gives you an extra little bit. They carved the whole figure, but they carved a little extra.
When you hear about a carousel being in park paint, which is normally how we normally get them when we start to work on them, that means that any color that they would use on the benches in the park or on the poles, light poles or whatever, they became the paints that they painted the horses with later on.
So these ones are directly from the park. They haven't been worked on yet. Some of them are in better shape than other ones. If you look on the outside of a carousel, the bigger pieces, the more showy pieces with jewels and everything will tend to get more riders, and they're exposed more to the outside, especially on the zoo ride, which didn't have any closing. So there was no walls to it. So you have a metal grate. So anytime if wind or anything blew in, they would be the first ones that would get hit by anything. Typically, the way a carousel horse is constructed is it's built like a barrel, like a box. You've got wood on the sides, top and bottom, stacked wood in the front and the back. And then you have everything like the head and neck and the legs to the knees. All of those are separate pieces that are added on to the box. So those are all seams. For the stage this is in, you can see some of the wear on this piece where the paint is just chipping off. Underneath, you can see some of the wood, so it's all the way down past the primer, all the way to the wood of the figure. You can see cracks happening here. You can see there's a nail hole there. A lot of what is the damage or what is the rod or what is the repair work needed is hidden under those layers of paint. So our first process would be taking these, stripping them down, and to see what structurally needs to be done to make them solid and sound for people to ride on. So once they get stripped, we can really get a good idea as the repair work needed to get these into shape. And then they'd go from being stripped to over into our repair shop to be worked on. They'd be gone through as much of the repair work, and the pieces that need to be glued in or recarved or anything would be done there. And then after that's all done, we would make sure they're all sealed. And then we sand them, prime them. And once we get the first coat of primer on them, that lets us see the last bits of anything else that needed to be touched up or done or repaired. And then they'll get their last coats of primers, and then they'll go out to our paint shop to work on.
We have the whole layout of this ride there. So we have already thought about the color scheme that makes this all work. I know what I want this to look like. And the horse tells it to you by the look of the horse. And if it looks more feminine or looks more aggressive with the way the mouth is or whatever. And you think about that and you play the colors. And then I come in the morning and I said, aha, I know what I want to do here. European carousels, very blocky, very straightforward, not a lot of movement, not a lot of expression. These same carvers came to our country and look at what they did. The heads are up in the air, the neck is moving to the side, the feet are moving in different directions. It looked to me as if these carvers and these artisans felt all the freedom that was afforded them in this country, and they expressed it in what they did. That's what we try to do now as artists, is to take what they have given us and just expand on it a little bit. A lot of what I do comes from here. Then it goes to here. You have to feel it. I'm going to be 77 in a couple of months, and I still get up at 6 o'clock and I come in, and if you don't like doing something, you don't do that. You know, I'm not going to retire. I'll be right here doing this.
Sorry about the technical. Where's Alyssa? Alyssa, why don't you? Alyssa's the one who put that together. And guys, so that will all be there. And there's a lot more footage that they shot and the interview with that. And so what I'm going to do is do the film. And I'm really waiting to find out when the carousel is going to be moved and reconstructed, because I want that to all be part of the film. So I made some calls over the last few days just to find out where things are at, and I haven't really got a good answer yet. So we'll see.
He's calling you tomorrow. He is. I called him.
I was going to call tomorrow.
No. I already called Phil.
Oh, did you? Oh,
He said he's going to call you tomorrow.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. See, that is your county government at work. Thank you, so anyways, so thank you for that, and I apologize for the audio thing. It was actually the microphone. When the microphone's on, it kind of cuts it out, so there are two audio sources on it. So Sharon, our wonderful engineer back there, caught that, so thank you. I think there's something else that we wanted to talk about. Roger, did we want to talk about this?
Yeah, why not?
Okay, so these are limited edition ornaments that the Broome County Historical Society has commissioned that are going to be ready in a few days. And so there's one for each carousel. They're going to be sold through the Broome County Historical Society, but also they're going to be sold at Robertson. The Broome County Historical Society's tree at Robertson this year, Christmas tree, is carousel themed, and these ornaments are going to be on there. We're going to sell them individually and as sets. They are made of like zinc alloy. They're made from a company out in Utah. They're going to be really, really nice, and they're arriving, of course, tomorrow. Did you have a question? Sure.
Yeah, is it going to have the 29-day?
See? I'm glad you asked that question. So, it is going to have the 29-day because Roger was the one, Roger the hero, he just found out this weekend that 1930 through some terrific research. But it was but for years everybody's been saying 1929, and so when we put these together several months ago, we went to the National Register and all these other sources, and they said 1929. So
I shouldn't have said anything.
So Roger shouldn't have said anything. No. So here's the story. If these sell out and we do it again next year, these will really be worth money because they'll have no escape. So So anyway, so yeah, we're really excited about that. So on each ornament it has a little bit of information on the back, and you'll be able to see them first. They'll be on the Robertson tree this weekend. But like I said, they're going to sell them at their gift shop. We're going to sell them to the Historical Society. And we're really excited about it because we think it'll be something really special. And I think we've decided we, the Historical Society, we might start doing this every year, come up with a new thing to do. They'll be dated and everything on the back. This is 2024, and then next year we'll do something else. So, anyways, any questions for me or Roger or Alyssa about anything that you've seen tonight?
There was a time when to ride on a carousel, you had to bring a piece of trash. When did that start and has it stopped, or is it still in effect?
I think it just kind of faded away. You know, I remember when I moved here, that was the policy that, yeah, you had to bring a piece of garbage to work. And through the old vintage pictures, a lot of, they have signs up at each carousel saying that. But I think it just kind of quietly died away, I'm guessing. It was just not a jumper. I don't know if it had a specific name.
Just wanted to follow up. Normally, the fairs are open in the winter, the first 3 weekends in December. I don't know if that's for sure, but just so you know.
So normally they're open
The first 3 weekends in December.
the first 3 weekends in December.
Saturday. Yeah, Rec Park.
Johnson City has a carousel day too. I think Santa's there.
The one in Mexico also has.
It's like a no-north.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I really don't know when they're open, but you might check their websites.
Is there stationary benches on all of them too? I recall those.
Are there stationary benches on all of them?
Or on any of them?
Oh, yeah. I don't know if they're on all of them, but I know they're on some of them.
Were they built that way, or were they places for horses?
No, were they built that way with stationary benches? And yes, they were.
The grandmothers.
The murals that go around the outside, when I was a kid, those fascinated me. But do they tell stories?
Do the murals tell stories? I don't think originally they did. They were just decorative. But I know that the Rec Park has references to Rod Serling, I believe.
No, some of them, when I was a kid, some of them looked like pirates, some of them looked like,
Right.
Fairy tales.
yeah, like Grimm's fairy tales.
Yeah, I don't know if they were intended to tell a story, but yeah, they had figures of pirates. Yeah.
You brought up about the catching the ring. I don't know if people know about this because I only found out about it last year. There's a vintage carousel in Eldridge Park in Elmira, and it's not 100% restored, but it's operational. And if you want to catch a ring, you can still do it. The outer ring does not go up and down, but it's also the fastest carousel in the world. Noticeable. When you get on it, you are moving. And it's big and it goes really fast.
Did everybody hear that? Yeah.
If you don't go story, St. Johnson did all that because when he was a child, his family could not afford the center patents for him to write that merry-go-round. And he said that no child should ever have it.
Yeah, that's
what he says.
the story is that Johnson always wanted to ride when he was a kid, and he never had the nickel to be able to do it, and that's why all of his carousels were to be free.
Well, that's a true story.
Yep, and it's quoted in the National Register, so it should
Have their records of when they were bought?
I'm sorry?
The the people who manufacture the carousels, do they have all their
Okay.
own records?
That's a good question. Did the people that made the carousels have records of them? No. I contacted them, gosh, I don't know, maybe 3 weeks ago, and asked that very question. And they said they had looked and looked, and they can't find any records that pertain to the carousels that we have. I was prepared to drive out there and see them and photograph them, but we just don't, unfortunately. Yeah.
Roger, I have a question about the band organs. I know in Rec Park and Ross Park, we still have the original band organs, and I understand the ideal original band organ was destroyed in the 36 flood, but do we have any idea what happened to the rest of the band organs?
I don't know what happened to the rest of the band organs. I know that there's a man, I believe his name is Harvey Rail. He was the band organ guru. And I believe he ended up taking one of them and restoring it. But no, I don't know what happened to all the band organs.
Harvey Rail actually had them in his house, put an addition on his house, and had them. I was there. It's amazing.
I had heard that Harvey Rail actually had a room with the organ installed. Last summer, there was a big convention of band organ enthusiasts, and it was held out at Highland Park. Oh gosh, what an experience. These people came from all over the country, hauling band organs behind their cars, and they all sat up here in the park, and oh gosh, what a thrill. Yeah, that was an amazing event. I believe they're going to do it again this next year.
They probably won't be there till next week.
Okay. And then for the 100th anniversary of Rec Park, which was in 1925, is there anything in the works? Like a celebration?
I'm not aware of anything in terms of celebration for the 100th anniversary of our park. I got to figure somebody's working on something, but I'm not aware of it. And by the way, we should have ornaments available at the History Center on Monday.
Yes. Before we let you go, Alyssa told me a great story. Somebody asked about the panels. And so, I'll tell you a story about this. So the panels that are being restored on the Ross Park Carousel. Go ahead. She told me a really fascinating story.
So the restorers were telling me they restore everything top to bottom. So the floorboards, the rounding boards, which are the boards around the top, the horses, the benches, all of it. And one of the first things that they do when they get these pieces, besides cataloging and making sure that they have everything labeled and they know what goes where so it can go back together, is they actually strip the old paint off one layer at a time, and they try to get it back to the original design so that they can see what colors were used, what patterns were used when the carousel was originally installed. And so for the Ross Park Carousel, there are 16 rounding board sections, and they were able to get the paint back all the way to the original paint, and it revealed like a curtain motif, like tufted curtains. And so every other rounding board is going to be that original design. They're going to basically recreate that. And then in between, they're going to feature scenes from popular movies the year that Carousel was installed. And they work with the local town or the park to decide on what those designs are going to be, and then they have a guy in-house that specializes in painting those motifs.
Any other questions? Oh, one more. Sure.
Yeah, Early in the 70s, my summer job was to work on the CFJ merry-go-round. I wonder if there's anybody here tonight that worked on a merry-go-round.
Sharon's son.
Looks like someone raised their hand back there.
Sharon's son.
You worked on them?
Sharon's son.
Little Sharon's son.
I was working for DPW, I got to clean carousel one day. CFJ carousel, so that's pretty fun.
Well, I hope, oh, back to the microphone went out. I hope everybody enjoyed tonight. Thank you. Enjoy your Thanksgiving and travel safe tomorrow, and we'll see you again soon. Have a good night.